Imagine this. Every moment of your life, every smile, every betrayal, every fleeting joy and crushing sorrow must be lived again. Not once, not twice, but eternally, without escape. This is not science fiction, not a religious myth. It is a thought experiment proposed by Friedrich Nietzsche, the eternal return. He called it the heaviest weight, a vision so unbearable that most would recoil from it instantly. What if everything that has ever happened to you will return, exactly the same, endlessly repeating in a cycle without end? The eternal return is not about redemption or progress or even punishment. It offers no happy ending, no comforting promise of reward. It is existence stripped bare, repeated infinitely. Every mistake, every humiliation, every moment of despair replayed again and again. And yet, Nietzsche believed this was not merely a curse. It was also the ultimate test. If you could stare this thought in the face and still say yes, if you could affirm the endless return of your own life, then you would achieve the highest strength. You would love fate itself with all its shadows and horrors. But how do we respond to such a vision? How do we live if every second is destined to echo through eternity? For some, this thought might lead to despair. For others, it could ignite a fierce affirmation of life. Tonight, we descend into Nietzsche's most haunting idea. We will uncover its origins, explore its terrifying weight, and confront what it means for us today, in our own fractured, restless lives. This is not just philosophy. This is a confrontation with existence itself. Origins and context. The idea of the eternal return did not appear out of nowhere. It emerged from Nietzsche's lifelong struggle with questions of meaning, suffering, and the value of existence. Nietzsche lived in the late 19th century, an age when traditional religion was losing its authority. Yet science had not given humanity a new foundation for meaning. He famously declared that God is dead. But what does humanity do when its most powerful story collapses? Without God, without heaven, without eternal justice, what remains? The eternal return was Nietzsche's radical answer. It is important to remember that Nietzsche was not the first to imagine cycles of time. Ancient Stoics like Marcus Aurelius spoke of the universe burning and being reborn endlessly. Hindu and Buddhist traditions also describe time as circular, not linear. But for Nietzsche, this was no abstract cosmology. It was personal, existential, a direct challenge to the individual. He asked us to imagine a demon whispering in our ear. This life, as you live it now and have lived it, you will have to live once more, and countless times more. Imagine the weight of those words. Would you curse the demon? Or would you embrace him as a messenger of truth? This is why Nietzsche called it the heaviest weight. Because if every moment repeats forever, there is no escape. You cannot run from your past, cannot undo your mistakes, cannot hope for a better afterlife. What you have done, you must own completely. And yet, the eternal return was also Nietzsche's most daring experiment in strength. For him, the true test of one's spirit was not in avoiding pain, but in affirming it. Not in wishing for a different life, but in declaring, I would live this exact life again, and again, and again. Here lies the paradox. The eternal return is both a nightmare and a challenge. It is a vision that can crush you or transform you into something stronger than despair. The psychological weight. To grasp the psychological weight of the eternal return, you must imagine it not as a distant theory, but as a personal reality. Not an abstract cycle of the universe, but your own life, looping endlessly. Every word you have spoken, every silence you regret, every betrayal, every humiliation, every fleeting kiss, every missed opportunity, not erased, not redeemed, but repeated, again and again. What happens when you let this thought truly sink in? For many, it feels like a suffocating nightmare. The mind rebels. We are trained to think of time as linear, as a story moving forward, where mistakes can be corrected, where suffering can eventually be left behind. The eternal return erases that comfort. There is no later when things get better. There is only the eternal recurrence of what already is. This is why Nietzsche called it the heaviest weight, because it presses down on the soul with an unbearable demand. Can you love this life enough to live it again, forever? Psychologically, the eternal return functions like a mirror. It forces us to face our lives without excuses. If we recoil in horror, if we curse the thought, it reveals how much of our existence we secretly despise. But if we can embrace it, if we can whisper yes, then it reveals a strength few possess. Nietzsche saw this not just as philosophy, but as a spiritual challenge. The eternal return is a test of affirmation. Can you transform even your deepest wounds into something you would willingly endure again? Can you say yes not only to joy, but to despair, to shame, to failure? For most of us, the answer is no. And that honesty is brutal. It strips away illusions and shows us how fragile our relationship to life truly is. This is why Nietzsche framed the eternal return not as a dogma to believe, but as a question to confront. A question that pierces straight into the heart of existence. The eternal return in literature and art. Nietzsche was not alone in wrestling with the nightmare of repetition. Long before and after him, artists and writers gave voice to the same haunting vision. The endless cycle of suffering, the prison of existence that returns again and again. Consider Dostoevsky. In The Brothers Karamazov, the character Ivan asks whether eternal harmony could justify even a single tear of an innocent child. Here, time is not circular, but the weight of suffering presses with the same force as Nietzsche's demon. What if pain, once inflicted, is never redeemed? What if every cruelty echoes forever? Kafka takes this further. His characters often seem trapped in endless cycles without escape. The man who cannot reach the law in Before the Law, or Gregor Samsa, doomed to repeat the absurdity of his insect-like existence in the Metamorphosis. These are not literal returns, but psychological ones, loops of despair where meaning is endlessly postponed and life itself becomes an infinite corridor of futility. Even in modern art, the eternal return reappears in subtle forms. The paintings of Edvard Munch, distorted figures trapped in spirals of anxiety, echo Nietzsche's weight. In film, directors like Tarkovsky and Bela Tarr explore time as an oppressive circle where characters drift endlessly through the same motions, unable to escape their fates. What unites all these visions is the terror of repetition. We fear that life has no final resolution, no escape, no end of the story. We fear that our suffering is not leading anywhere, not building toward redemption, but simply looping back upon itself. And yet, in each of these works there is also a flicker of resistance, a whisper that perhaps, by staring into the abyss of repetition, something deeper is revealed. A chance to affirm life not despite its cycles, but because of them. Literature and art have always mirrored this struggle. They show us the weight, but also the possibility of bearing it. For Nietzsche, the eternal return was not only philosophy. It was a vision that demanded expression, and art has carried it ever since as both a warning and a challenge. Modern relevance. Why the eternal return still haunts us. The eternal return is not just an ancient idea. It is alive today, woven into the structure of modern life. Perhaps more than ever, we live inside cycles that repeat endlessly. Think about the rhythm of work. Every morning, the alarm. Every evening, the same exhaustion. The cycle of bills, deadlines, routines. Each day echoing the one before until weeks blur into months and months into years. For many, life already feels like an endless return. Technology intensifies this. Social media loops us into infinite scrolls where the same images, the same jokes, the same outrage replay in slightly different forms. Streaming platforms recycle stories. News cycles repeat tragedies. Even entertainment begins to feel like déjà vu. We are trapped in repetitions, each one feeding the next. Psychologically, this repetition can feel suffocating. People speak of burnout, not because life is hard in the heroic sense, but because it is endlessly repetitive. The same notifications, the same meetings, the same distractions. Like Nietzsche's demon whispering, "You will live this again, and again, and again." But here is where Nietzsche's challenge becomes brutally relevant. If our lives are already cyclical, how do we respond? Do we collapse into despair, numbing ourselves with distraction? Or do we embrace amor fati, the love of fate, and learn to affirm even the monotony? In this sense, the eternal return is not just a metaphysical theory. It is a mirror for modern existence. It asks, can you face the endless loops of your life without fleeing? Can you transform repetition into affirmation? Think of how many people dream of escape, a new job, a new city, a new relationship, only to find the same patterns returning. Nietzsche would say, of course they return, because you return. Your choices, your habits, your fears, they follow you in every cycle. Until you affirm them, they will remain your eternal prison. This is why the eternal return still haunts us. It speaks directly to the despair of modern life, but it also offers the possibility of liberation. If you can say yes to the loop, if you can love even the repetition, then even the suffocating cycles of modernity can become bearable. The existential choice: despair or affirmation. At the heart of the eternal return lies a question, and it is not abstract. It is brutally personal. Will you despair, or will you affirm? To despair is to recoil from the demon's whisper, to curse your life as a burden, to see your mistakes as chains, to hope desperately for another chance that will never come. This is the path of resentment, the soul that wants life to be other than it is, forever at war with reality. In this choice, the eternal return becomes a curse, a prison of endless repetition. But there is another path, To affirm is to embrace the cycle, to declare, yes, let it return. I will endure it again and again, because it is mine. This does not erase suffering. It does not soften the blows of existence, but it transforms them. Every humiliation becomes a scar you would willingly carry again. Every failure becomes a step you would walk once more. Every fleeting joy, every fragile moment of love becomes infinitely precious because it is eternal. This is the choice Nietzsche places before us, and he does not hide its difficulty. To affirm is almost superhuman. It requires strength beyond consolation, beyond religion, beyond the hope of escape. It is to stand in the storm of existence and say, I will it. For Nietzsche, this was the birth of the Übermensch, the overman. Not a figure of domination, but of affirmation. One who no longer seeks redemption, but who creates meaning by saying yes to the eternal return. Each of us stands at this fork in the path, despair or affirmation. To be crushed by life's endless cycles, or to rise above them by embracing their weight. The eternal return is not just a theory, it is a decision you make every day. A decision that shapes whether your existence is a prison or a triumph.
The eternal return is Nietzsche's most terrifying idea, because it leaves us no escape, no heaven to reward us, no future utopia to redeem us, no promise of an ending that makes sense of the suffering. Only this life, lived once, lived forever. But within that terror lies a possibility. The possibility of affirmation. The possibility of looking at your life, your mistakes, your heartbreaks, your victories, your fleeting joys, and saying, yes, I will live it again. I choose it. This is the heaviest weight, but also the greatest freedom. To affirm the eternal return is to free yourself from regret, from the illusion of escape, from the longing for another life. It is to embrace the one life you have with such intensity that even its repetition becomes beautiful. Most will despair before this thought. Most will curse the demon's whisper. But for those who dare to affirm, something extraordinary happens. The very weight that once crushed you becomes the ground on which you stand taller. The cycle that once suffocated you becomes the rhythm of your dance. This is Nietzsche's challenge. Not to believe in the eternal return as a doctrine, but to confront it as a question. If your life were to return eternally, would you embrace it or flee from it? That is a question only you can answer. And perhaps, in the quiet of the night, when you feel the echo of your days pressing against you, you will hear the whisper of the demon. And when you do, remember, your answer is your destiny. So ask yourself now, if everything you do must return forever, will you curse it or will you love it? If this exploration of Nietzsche's most haunting idea spoke to you, don't let it end here. Subscribe for more journeys into the darker corners of philosophy and literature. Leave a comment with your thoughts. Would you embrace the eternal return? And share this video with someone who dares to face life without illusions. Until next time, remember, every moment matters, because every moment may return forever.